Oh, come on! What the heck happened? Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today, we're counting down our picks for the top 10 movies that should have been amazing. For this list, we'll be looking at movies that were extremely hyped before release, thanks to their franchise's history and the legacy of its characters. We aren't saying that all of these movies are terrible, although some certainly are. We're just saying that they were massive letdowns after the incredible hype that preceded their release. If you like what you're hearing, be sure to check out the full song at the link below. Number 10, Terminator Dark Fate.
I can't fight it if I don't know what we're up against.
It's a Rev 9 model. You don't fight it. You run from it.
Oh, how silly we were to put our hope in Dark Fate. Let's be honest, the Terminator series has been on the decline since 1991, and despite the abomination that was Genesis, we held out hope for Dark Fate thanks to two things, or should we say names, Linda Hamilton and James Cameron.
I'll be back.
Both were returning to the series for the first time since T2, and Dark Fate was serving as a continuation of that story. In other words, it was doing the same ignore all the sequels thing that Halloween did the previous year.
Touching story. Does it have a point?
Only Dark Fate wasn't nearly as successful. Dark Fate was just another mediocre Terminator sequel, and by this point, we should just terminate this franchise altogether. Number 9, Solo: A Star Wars Story. Disney's track record with Star Wars has been hit and miss, but they really dropped the ball with Solo.
This is unbelievable. I'm definitely gonna have some words with someone about this.
Coming out on the heels of The Force Awakens, Rogue One, and The Last Jedi, audiences were starting to experience franchise overload by the time Solo hit theaters.
Damn it! I'm never gonna hear the end of this!
The divisive response towards The Last Jedi certainly did not help. Nevertheless, this thing should have been a cinematic event. Lawrence Kasdan was returning, Phil Lord and Christopher Miller were directing, it had an amazing cast, and it told the origin story of an iconic movie character. However, the movie suffered a rocky production, most notably switching out directors, and the quality greatly suffered.
It's all right. Save energy. I'm gonna get you out of here. All right?
It ended up grossing an abysmal $393 million, less than Last Jedi's opening weekend. Number 8, The Last Airbender. Avatar fans still have nightmares about The Last Airbender.
Why?
He had a vision at the Southern Air Temple prayer field. He talked to a dragon spirit who he thinks can help us. He thinks if he goes to another spiritual place, he can get back to the spirit world.
I don't think that's a good idea.
Avatar is a beloved animated series, both enormously popular and the winner of various prestigious awards, including 5 Annies, an Emmy, and a Peabody. Then we heard that M. Night Shyamalan was directing a movie adaptation, and everyone let out a collective groan that could be heard the world over.
My grandmother will ask you a lot of questions.
Still, Michael Dante DiMartino and Bryan Konietzko crafted such a phenomenal series. Surely some of the show's drama, comedy, and excitement would find its way into this adaptation, right? Alas, The Last Airbender is notoriously awful. It's one of those movies you probably haven't seen, but you just know it's terrible thanks to pop culture osmosis.
Okay? Everybody can help us now!
Number 7, Suicide Squad. Despite 2 prior disappointments in the DCEU, more on that in a bit, we held out hope for Suicide Squad. After all, this was something different.
That's it? What, we some kind of Suicide Squad?
In the midst of the MCU phenomenon, here was a superhero movie about anti-heroes. You had Deadshot, the Joker, and Harley Quinn, 3 beloved comic book characters who were being played by acclaimed and popular actors. It could have been the DCEU's twisted answer to the Avengers, but it was an embarrassing dud.
Seriously? What the hell's wrong with you people?
We're bad guys. It's what we do.
The movie was horribly directed, Jared Leto made a terrible Joker, and the memes created from the movie quickly became more popular than the movie itself. It was yet another sore spot in the DCEU.
Oh. You left me in a black hole of rage and confusion.
Number 6, The Matrix Reloaded and The Matrix Revolutions.
Your life is the sum of a remainder of an unbalanced equation inherent to the programming of the Matrix. You are the eventuality of an anomaly which, despite my sincerest efforts, I have been unable to eliminate from what is otherwise a harmony of mathematical precision.
Here we have Exhibit A in unnecessary sequels tarnishing the legacy of a franchise. The Matrix is undeniably one of the best, most inventive, and most influential action films ever made. While Reloaded wasn't a bad sequel per se, it was disappointing. What with the PS2-esque CGI and bowling pin sound effects.
It is inevitable.
Come on, get out of there.
The real travesty is Revolutions, a movie that even the Reloaded fans have trouble defending. This was nothing but a soulless, confusing, CGI-filled spectacle, and a large chunk of the movie was devoted to the Battle of Zion. Who cares? It's a perfect example of unnecessarily expanding on lore. So much so that the story gets bogged down in details and endless exposition.
Did you do that?
For now.
That's nice. I know he'd love it.
Will we ever see him again?
I suspect so. Someday.
Number 5, Prometheus. Oh hey, speaking of a story unnecessarily expanding on lore, Prometheus.
I need to know why. What did we do wrong? Why do you hate us?
Did we really need a prequel to the Alien series? Not really. But we certainly were not going to say no. After all, there were enough hints and reveals in Alien to suggest an intriguing story. What we got instead was this horribly plotted mess. The movie gets way too bogged down on the concepts and lore, and the characters are little more than cardboard cutout exposition dumps.
If these things made us, then surely they could save us.
Not to mention they are all pants on head stupid. It has Damon Lindelof's DNA written all over it. Cool ideas that are jumbled together into an incomprehensible and poorly thought out letdown. Number 4, Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice.
You're letting him kill Martha.
What does that mean? Why did you say that name?
It's really amazing how DC managed to bungle their IP so horribly. Batman vs. Superman should have been the movie event to end all movie events. You have Batman, you have Superman, and you have them fighting each other. How could that formula fail? Well, Batman vs. Superman is your answer. Maybe this isn't the worst thing of all time, but it certainly wasn't good. It was horribly plotted and paced. The characterizations were completely off, and the titular fight itself lasted like 5 minutes. Not to mention Jesse Eisenberg as Lex Luthor.
Boys, Bruce Wayne meets Clark Kent. I love it. I love bringing people together. How are we?
It had lofty aspirations, but it just couldn't come together into a satisfying whole. Suddenly, we were all worried about Justice League, and rightfully so.
Kal-El, no!
Number 3, Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Some people were a little hesitant about a new Indiana Jones movie. It had been nearly 20 years since Last Crusade, and Harrison Ford was in his mid-60s. Even with Grandpa Indy, though, it was still another Indiana Jones adventure. There was hope to be found, although those hopes were quickly dashed. These movies have always been silly, but Crystal Skull took the silliness way too far. You had that infamous monkey scene, the Jeep driving off a cliff and landing in a tree, Indiana surviving a nuclear explosion by hiding in a fridge, and worst of all, aliens. Literal aliens. It was far too bombastic for its own good, and the horrible visual effects did not help. Some franchises should just stay in the past. Number 2, the Hobbit Trilogy.
Flesh. I need flesh.
Blimey! But look what's come out of me Uta! It's got arms and legs and everything!
The Lord of the Rings is a landmark, arguably the greatest film trilogy of all time. and 3 of the greatest movies ever made, period. And then there's The Hobbit. Now, some people were a little hesitant about The Hobbit, seeing as how Peter Jackson was adapting a roughly 300-page children's novel into an 8-hour-long epic. But come on, this guy gave us Lord of the Rings. Have some faith, people.
You've got that all wrong.
Oh, I don't think so. Barrel Rider.
Unfortunately, people were right to be hesitant. The trilogy is not only laborious, but it's filled with horrid CGI and filmed at a very controversial 48 frames per second. Granted, expectations were unimaginably high coming off Lord of the Rings, but these movies did themselves absolutely zero favors.
Can you promise that I will come back?
Before we unveil our most disappointing #1 pick, here are a few dishonorable mentions.
If you don't leave now, we'll die together.
I can think of worse ways to go.
Ben, you're obviously crazy, Mr.
Bond. James Bond.
Victor, don't do this!
There is no victor. There is only doom.
Hercules, how's better landing than me?
Jonga, go. They booked me, man.
He says, for orcs, war solves everything.
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications. #1, Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. Don't let recency bias fool you.
Be gone with him!
While The Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker are polarizing, nothing compares to the debacle that was The Phantom Menace.
I'll try spinning, that's a good trick.
If you were too young or not born yet, then you don't understand just how disastrous this movie was. The hype was unlike anything seen before or since, and yet it was completely and utterly reviled. People could not believe what they'd just seen. It was so bad that everyone was still talking about The Matrix long after Phantom Menace had come and gone, and The Matrix walked away with 4 Technical Academy Awards. Meanwhile, Star Wars was nominated for 7 Razzies. When it comes to the most disappointing movie ever, nothing touches The Phantom Menace.
What will happen to me now?
Do you agree with our picks? Let us know in the comments. And hey, if you're a fan of the song playing right now, be sure to check out the music video for it right here.
But some more when you cover through the night,